If there is one game that defined my childhood experience, that would be Star Fox 64. Back in 1997, those 64-bit graphics were lit. On top of that, you could actually understand what the characters were saying to each other. I remember on the original Star Fox on the Super Nintendo, and let me tell you, there was a lot to be desired in terms of graphics and how Fox McCloud communicated with his teammates. The language they used on the Super Nintendo makes all the characters sound like they just went out the night before and did a lot of acid before the mission. Anyway.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
Star Fox 64 was, for me at least, a stand-in for a great Star Wars experience on the N64. Now, I know what some may say in regards to this. I can already see the comment section. What about Shadows of the Empire, dumbass? Shadows of the Empire was the shit, Mimz. You're a moron. Well, and then there's the tried and true comment. Wow, you're a cuck, you cuck master. But to those who would ridicule me for saying Star Fox 64 was my stand-in for a great Star Wars game, I would say this for the following reasons. 1. Star Fox 64 has space battles that were more compelling. 2. The controls for Star Fox 64 were a lot smoother than they were for Shadows of the Empire. And 3, I don't know why, but Shadows of the Empire used to give me headaches as a kid. Looking back, I think it was a variation of motion sickness because whoever made Shadows of the Empire decided that Dash Rendar should move like a constipated robot on Adderall. But back to my main point. I love Star Fox 64. To this day, I still love Star Fox 64. As an adult, I see the story of Star Fox 64 as a bit sophomore for my liking, but then again, it was a game made for kids. The Nintendo 64 was targeted to kids in the marketing leading up to its release. I remember when all I did was dream about having
Something's gone wrong in the happy-go-lucky world of Nintendo. Introducing Super Smash Bros., where all your favorite characters go toe-to-toe in one 4-player star-studded slam fest, only on Nintendo 64.
Mom, my sister, and I went to the mall. I would always go into the game store and play the demo for Star Fox 64. The demo for Star Fox would be all I would get until 1998 because we simply didn't have the means when I was a kid to get a Nintendo 64. My sister and I made do with the Sega Genesis that had been gifted to us when we were at home and done all of our schoolwork. When Christmas came in 1997, I was floored when my mom gave me an option. A Nintendo 64 for Christmas or a PlayStation. And without skipping a beat, I screamed, N64. Definitely an N64. I couldn't believe it. I thought I was dreaming. At this point in my life, my family only had money for the basic necessities like rent and food. The fact that my sister and I were getting a Nintendo 64 had put me on cloud 9. About a half a year later, I was over at a friend's house and we were playing his PlayStation. Admittedly, I was impressed with some of the features on the PlayStation. For the most part, I was intrigued with how the PlayStation blended game with MP4 files. However, nothing stuck out to me in regards to the PlayStation that would make me feel like I was missing out on something. In fact, my friend and I used to spend hours bickering about which system was better. My Nintendo 64 was my pride and joy, and nobody was going to tell me that I had the inferior system. Then, on one fateful day in early 1998, I was at home, bored, and wanted to see what my buddy was up to up the street. So, I made my way up to his place, and as soon as I knocked on the door, I saw him running to open his door with excitement all over his face. He said, "Dude, you gotta see this." See what? We quickly made our way to his room, and on the TV was a PlayStation game I had never seen before. In fact, it was unlike anything I'd ever seen in a game. My buddy said, "Do you know what this is?" I said, no, what is it? He handed me the game case, which was unlike any game case I'd ever seen before. This case was so thick, it could hold up to 3 CDs, which, coincidentally, was the length of the game. The front of the case was white. In the foreground of the cover art was a man grasping the large sword he was carrying on his back, while looking at this ominous large building illustrated in the distance. The title of the game read, Final Fantasy VII. Huh? I gotta admit, I didn't know what to make of the V and the 2 I's. As I was 11, I had no concept of Roman numerals at that time. My friend told me that the V stood for 5 and the 2 I's stood for 2 1s, so if you added them up, they equaled 7. So the game was Final Fantasy VII. Wait, the Final Fantasy VII? Then it hit me. The game that was in my friend's possession was the game that everyone had been talking about. How could you not know what this game was? This game had the largest advertising budget of any game at the time. I remember seeing the theatrical trailer on TV and being mesmerized by the graphics. I also remember the voiceover guy saying something like, "This year's biggest adventure will not be in a theater near you." Really
An evil empire is sucking the life force from the planet, destroying all that's in its path. It's up to one soldier of fortune to save the world. If he succeeds, you survive. If he fails, you can always hit the reset button. Final Fantasy VII.
PlayStation.
Beyond the edge of reality lies a story of ultimate conquest, a story of war and friendship, a story of a love that can never be, and a hatred that always was. And now, the most anticipated epic adventure of the year will never come to a theater near you. Final Fantasy VII.
PlayStation.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
Was my fate. As I was standing there, examining the case in amazement, my friend had already jumped back onto his PlayStation and was continuing his playthrough of Final Fantasy VII. He said he had just blown up this huge reactor with these other characters, and now they were all on the run to not get caught. I was puzzled. I was like, what kind of good guy just blows shit up at the beginning of a game? But I just sat there and watched my friend play. Before I knew it, day had turned into night. Before I went home, my friend had just escaped the city of Midgar, and the main character of the game, Cloud Strife, had just told his whole crew that the Shinra people had not been the real big bad at all. No, no, no. In fact, the real big bad was this tall, handsome guy with silver locks with a large katana sword named Sephiroth. He was evil. He was the big bad. Cloud made it clear that Sephiroth was the real bad guy, and he needed to square up with Sephiroth and save the planet. I was so intrigued by the plot at this point. My friend had just spent hours fighting the Shinra Corporation, blowing up its reactors, getting blown up by Shinra, looking at you, Sector 7 and Sector 7 slums, and then finally going to Shinra HQ to bust in and save Aerith. Shinra had kidnapped her because she was vital to their plans. She was vital because they needed her to find the Promised Land, because she was the last of a race called the Ancients. While Aerith was rescued by Cloud and his friends, the president of Shinra had been murdered by Sephiroth, and the dead president's son Rufus had immediately taken over the giant corporation that is Shinra. While Cloud made it clear that Sephiroth was the real crisis of the planet, Rufus made one hell of a debut immediately following the death of his father, and he promised a reign of terror all on his own. The other games I played as a kid, Final Fantasy VII was a game unlike any other. Its story was massive, the map of the open world was massive, and the story continued to get more and more exciting with each town Cloud and the group visited, and with each boss fight that was fought and won. At one point, my friend convinced his mom to get him the Ultimate Guide to Final Fantasy VII. At the time, the Ultimate Guide was the Holy Bible of sorts for Final Fantasy VII. This guide not only made sure that you knew every story beat, but also made sure you knew about leveling up your magic to make it more powerful, where to find secret materia, and of course, how to breed.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
Meteor. In the world of Final Fantasy VII, there's Mako. And Mako is harnessed by the Shinra Corporation to create electricity. The problem here is that Mako isn't just some fuel that you can just suck up from the planet and use for electricity. In fact, Mako is considered the lifeblood of the planet. And that's what makes Aerith so integral to the story of Final Fantasy VII, and being the last ancient. The ancients believed that the life stream was vital to all life on the planet, because the life stream is not only what provided life to the planet, but is also a place where the dead returned after they had passed. So one can say the life stream was keeping the planet in balance between life and death. With every bit of Mako the Shinra Corporation had sucked up to use for electricity and other greedy ends, there was less life to go around for the planet. The Shinra Corporation was literally using the souls of the dead to power their ghoulish technology. What also set Final Fantasy VII apart from other games was that every single character in Cloud's party, they had a past and a present, and all characters had one thing in common. They all suffered tragic losses, and it was dealing with these losses, mourning these losses, is what defined them as the characters in the game we see. In essence, the story of Final Fantasy VII is a story about the human condition. In life there is loss, pain, suffering, tragedy, but there is also personal triumph. Ultimately, Final Fantasy VII is a story about how humans persevere from their losses and use their losses to become stronger. Looking back, what really makes Final Fantasy VII a masterclass in storytelling is how the relationship between the main character Cloud and the flower girl Aerith grows throughout the game. In the beginning section of the game in Midgar, you're rescuing her from the evil corporate Shinra that want to use her to get to the Promised Land. But what is the Promised Land? You know that Aerith is an ancient, a Cetra. The Cetra were once the original inhabitants of the planet, who could not only commune with the planet, but they could also speak with those who had passed, and they harbored great magic. This innocent will they, won't they relationship that Cloud and Aerith developed through the entire game was just another type of storytelling, another level of storytelling all the way back then in 1997. Unfortunately, it was also a relationship that was built up to tear us down. At the time when I was 11, I wondered, how? Why? Why would the game have us spend so much time with Aerith, getting to know her as a character, and coming to a point of deeply caring about her just to have the big bad kill her off? Why would the makers of the game kill off such an important person in our group, who was not only integral in the battle system due to the healing spells she would cast, but also because the first part of the entire game in the city of Midgar was pretty much dedicated to fleshing out the story a bit and finding out who Aerith was and how important she truly was to the story. Why go through all the trouble of rescuing Aerith at the Shinra building and taking her on the journey to fight Sephiroth and save the planet just to have her die as she was praying to the planet to prevent Sephiroth from destroying all life on the planet by summoning Meteor? Seriously, she literally died praying for the life of the planet. It was a very emotional experience at the time, seeing Cloud clutch a dead Aerith in his arms as he carried her to her final resting place, which was the Lake of the City of the Ancients. The rendered cutscene for this part of the story was just gorgeous and heartbreaking all at the same time. Cloud carries Aerith's still body into the lake with her arms folded over her midsection, watching her sink beneath the water, and as she sank further to the bottom, her arms became outstretched, and her hair parting beautifully in the final shot we saw of her. The death of Aerith really shook me. While I had known people that had passed away by the time I was 11, I had not lost a close family member or a friend at that point in my life. Seeing Aerith die before my eyes and knowing she was gone felt as if I had lost someone I had cared about. A video game had never moved me in such a gigantic way before. While I was used to characters dying in games like when Mario fell down a hole in the ground or when Fox McCloud got decimated by enemy fighters, those were quick video game deaths that you could always redo. In Final Fantasy VII, Aerith didn't simply jump and fall down a hole. I wanted revenge for the death of Aerith. I was seething. I continued to be the spectator and the co-pilot with the ultimate guide in my lap, at the ready to help my friend with any guidance that the guide would give. I watched him play every day until the day he beat the game and vanquished Sephiroth forever. I remember the ambiguous ending of the Words can't express how awesome it was to see the ending of a 70-plus hour journey coming to a conclusion. The adventure was spanning over 3 discs, over several different continents, different kinds of chocobos, battles, chocobo races, boss fights, and the final fight was Sephiroth. Not even mentioning the weapons fight, but now Meteor was here. It was time to see if the planet could truly pull itself together, if the life stream and Holy could work together to vanquish Meteor and defeat Sephiroth and the evil that was attacking the planet from within, once and for all. In some ways, the final cutscene of the game kind of took you into this other place. Some of the graphics were hit and miss throughout the entire game. The entire journey was beautiful, but this CGI ending was something else to behold in 1997 and 1998. And I just sat there in awe as we saw the characters communicate back and forth about doubt. They were wondering if what they had done was actually going to do a damn thing. And I just remember being on the edge of my seat wondering if the planet would pull through And then all of a sudden Tifa said, "What's that?" While we don't know for sure if Cloud and the gang made it out after Holy and the livestream attacked Meteor to save the planet, we do know for certain, in the epilogue of the game, that life did indeed go on. We see Red 13 and his pups running up this desolate mountain that overlooks what was once the metropolis of Midgar. Midgar was a city where no greenery, no trees, no flowers could grow before. But now that nature has retaken the planet, Midgar is nothing but greenery, and only its ruins remain. The final shot of Final Fantasy VII is Red 13 and his pups making roaring noises, wild geese flying overhead, and when the screen goes black, the laughter of children. Thank you all for watching. As you can tell, Final Fantasy VII is a game that is near and dear to my heart. Always will be. The story just hits right there with me all the time. And I think there's a lot to be said about Final Fantasy VII, its story, and climate change. But I'm not going to get into that. If you like what you've seen and you want to see more, please let me know. Also, I love critiques. I love to improve. So hopefully I'll catch y'all around, and thank you for watching.